All right, sound check. You guys should be able to hear me. And let me fix some stuff over on this side. All right. Turn that music down just a little bit. And what did I title today? I titled it Getting the Job. Getting the job in Linux admin and engineering. All right. So, man, I have not streamed in like quite a few days. So I'm catching up. And let's see, the wife's out of town. She's doing a scrap. Well, she's actually in town. She's just up north a little bit, doing a scrapbooking retreat. So if you guys have ever heard of that, they just go and they play with their scrapbooks a whole bunch. So what are we doing today then? We are talking about getting into Linux administration. I know people want to get into the field. We've had a lot of people talking down in the Discord the last few days and weeks about putting out, job feelers and getting interviews and putting in job applications and that kind of stuff. And it's not a fun thing when you're, looking for work and trying to find this stuff if you're not already in the field. If you're in the field, it feels like it's super easy to get a job when you already have a job. But a lot of times, how do we get in there if we're not doing Linux yet? So what I wanted to do was kind of have a day where we sat here and we talked about the things that I think you need to do to get into Linux. I think you need to learn some Linux. You need to get together a resume. I think you need to practice interview skills, and then probably repeat. But let's go look at some jobs and see what people are looking for as far as like what are the Linux skills that people are looking for, right? Like, because that's at the end of the day, isn't that? I mean, unless you're going to go into business completely for yourself, but even then, guys, I would argue you still need to know what people want, right? Give the people what they want, right? Fisherman, you declare bankruptcy. That's funny. I haven't seen you grifting on anybody down in the Discord lately, making them pay you. So, Johnny Man, how's it going? Yeah, we're just. I haven't, man. I looked to stream like every day this week, and I just went, I don't want to do it. And then I didn't go to the gym the first 3 days of the week because I was on call. So I finally got in there yesterday and today. So I feel like 10 times better because I've been going to the gym, the last few mornings. So what are the Linux skills? Like, what are people looking for, right? Let's go look at this. And I might even say like before you get a job in any type of thing, is self-assessment. What do you want to do? Right? Like, I was actually, we had somebody come in probably about 6 months ago. My buddy Ashton came by, and he's been working for Red Hat for the better part of, I think, 7 or 8 years now. And he's an open source guy. He came up through engineering, but he came to talk to the group about pre-sales engineering. What the heck's a pre-sales engineer, right? Like, most of you are probably like, hey, I want to do admin and then I want to be an engineer one day. Fine. Not everybody wants to do that, though. And not everybody wants to be in sales because, like, sales is a lot of, it's feast and famine, right? You got your good years and you got your bad years, and you've got your quotas to hit, and you've got to be, beating the pavement and all these terrible things that, like, I don't necessarily want to be in. I don't want to be dealing with people like that. Well, anyways, he came and talked about pre-sales engineering. And you go, what the hell's a pre-sales engineer? Well, the company's already got you. You're using their product, but they're coming in and they're designing stuff brand new, net new for people. It's a pretty wonderful gig because they're still kind of sales, but they're mostly building to the specifications they were already given. So it's a lot like, I don't want to put Fisherman's, business out there, but he does like solutions architecting for people. And solutions architecting is very similar. The customer already knows they want a thing, and they already know they want to explore a thing. And you're just kind of guiding them along that process. But there's stress in that role still, though, right? It's not just straight engineering. It's not engineering for the sake of engineering. It's like this pre-sales thing. So anyways, so one of our guys came and talked to you or talked to our group about it, and we didn't record that because we don't record those kind of things. But the point is, for people that want to get into these types of roles, man, like, what do you really want to do? Because like, I tell people I like to sit around completely unbothered by people all day and solve problems, and that's what engineering is. Some people think they want to do that, but then when they get into it, they find, no, I actually really like talking to people. You might want to go be a manager, right? You might do best pointing guys at me at the problems that need to be solved. And I assure you, if you don't point me at the problems that need to be solved, I'm not going to do things effectively. I'm like a little wandering cat that's just doing whatever it wants. You got to point me to the problem, right? You got to kind of engineers need to be scoped to what they're doing. Well, anyway, so fishermen, yeah, it's technical and it's people, yeah. So, yeah, fishermen half the time is programming systems and half the time programming users, I'm sure. But well, where I'm going with that is we're talking about this idea of like getting a role. What do you want to do, right? And I would argue that most people get into a lot of this tech stuff. They either fall into it or either on purpose or accidentally, but I'd say most people probably accidentally fall into the Linux type stuff because they just happen to be somebody who likes to solve problems, right? So my self-assessment, the way that I do this, and this is up in our Discord, looks something like this. We've got, by the way, we've got jobs over here. I'm going to just start going through jobs, and we're going to go look for themes, and then we're going to work through some of those themes doing Linux, right? Like Linux is what we do around here. So we're going to do some of that stuff. But I would posit that maybe before you even go and learn some Linux skills, and we're going to go figure out what we think those skills are and get together a resume and then practice some interview skills and get the interviews, right? Practice interview skills, put in for jobs. 4. My brain doesn't work anymore. Let's look at this is what I think you should do. I really think most people, if you were going to do a self-assessment, again, this is up in the Discord, so if you guys want a copy of it, go grab it. Streaking through the quad. All of my tests, everything I do, and I've got some more labs that I'm going to be publishing here soon on Killer Coda around testing methodologies and specifically a thing we call acceptance testing. And my methodology for testing always looks like this. I say, what's the purpose of the test? In this case, it's a self-assessment to determine skill and skill gaps. Figure out where your skills are, where your skills are kind of going, right? And then the scope is questions around current technical skills and technical interests, and then questions around current business skills or business interests. Now, I scoped this a little wider because this was for a specific team that I was on, but I've de-identified everything from that team when I wrote this. Whenever we talk about what's in scope, we always talk about what's out of scope. So out of scope is team needs. Like, what does the team, we had 8 people on the team at the time when I left. I helped build that team back up from 2 people. So I became the 3rd, and then I built them up to 8. 9 with me, and then 8 when I left. So what was not going to be part of the scope was what the team needed. Does the team need Lustre experience and InfiniBand experience? That was not the scope of like a skill assessment like this. This was a self-assessment for people to assess where they wanted to go. This was almost like the manager said, hey, Scott, can you put together like a quality of life? Like, I wouldn't say quality of life. Let's say quality of career thing for the engineers. Like, what will help these admins and engineers stay with us within the company? So I said, well, why don't we just make them tell us what they want to do? So that's what we did. External assessments will not be taken. So this was not like the company assessing the people. This was their own assessment of themselves, right? And this is how I think you should do it if you're going to do it. Methodology, you're going to have some numbering system, and it's going to be standardized across people. And then control is the questions will be asked of all the same assessed individuals. You'll be given the same time. I think it was like 3 weeks or something to fill out your thing. In this case, it was 5 business days, let's say, right? We wanted them to move through it. So this is what my self-assessment looks like. And it doesn't have to be this for you. If you guys are doing something else in tech, maybe you're a programmer and you want to change it to something similar to your work, but it looks something like this, right? You got Linux down through Kubernetes and all the things in between. And this is your self-assessment of your skill. And one of the things I tell people is you can't just put 10 down the board. I mean, you can put 10 down the board, but then I would tell you you're terrible at self-assessments. if you say, hey, I feel like I'm pretty good at Linux, but I've met people who've been doing it longer and are better than me at it, maybe you put yourself at like an 8. There's no shame in being high in something if you are high in it, right? So anyways, this is your technical self-assessment. And this is like, where do I think I'm at? An honest assessment of yourself. You don't ever have to show this to anybody. Even in our Linux sysadmin course, when people do this the first week, you don't have to show it to anybody if you don't want. It's for you. Now here's kind of the crux of it. The next one is the same exact page, but it's your interest. Do you want to do this stuff? I'll be honest, guys. I show people Linux all the time. I've shown maybe tens of thousands of people Linux in my college career and in my engineering career. People who are like, oh yeah, hey, I kind of want to do that stuff that you do, and I put them at a command line like this, and they don't want to do this. They tell me immediately, this is absolutely like the worst thing I've ever seen, Scott. I hate it. Maybe they don't even tell me that. They just like look at it and go, I'll go do something else. And I go, fair. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But I tell people all the time, and this is probably one of the most, appropriate things I could say on a stream like this. Wouldn't you rather know that right now for free, sitting here on Twitch for, maybe 15 minutes and you got to watch an ad or something? Wouldn't you rather know that here or on YouTube for free than being like one of my college students? I've probably had 30 college students in my career come to me in like a 300 level class and go, hey, when do I when do we get to like the cool stuff, or when do I I hate this command line Cisco stuff. When are we going to move it? And I'm like, this is the fucking job, guys. I'm sorry you've done this for 3 years to find out that like that's what people are going to pay you for. Because like if you don't like doing that, I'm going to be honest, man. I wish you had found out for free on a fucking Twitch stream, 3 years ago, rather than coming all the way through college and finding out that you hate this stuff. I think I might have even I've definitely told you guys this before. I have one of my in-laws. He's a chemical engineer. He's got his bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. And I remember shaking his hand when he graduated and said, hey, congratulations, we were having a little family party and stuff. And I said, hey, when are you going to get out of doing like this stuff that you do? He does like call center work. And I said, when are you going to get out of that and go use your chemical engineering degree? And he looked at me and he goes, Scott, I never want to do chemical engineering again. And I was like, it was like this whole big thing. Like, you finished your degree. You understand this type of engineering you want to do. Maybe not at like a master's or doctorate level, but he could go do chemical engineering stuff at least at a bachelor's level, at least never wants to touch it again. And that was years ago. Now, how long ago did he graduate? Probably at least 4 or 5 years ago. He has not done a single bit of chemical engineering. Wouldn't you have rather figured that out before you got done with college? That's my point. Like I tell people all the time, like, of the people I've shown Linux to, of my college students over the years and stuff, I'd say maybe about 10% even want to do it. And then maybe of that, only about 10% actually, I don't want to say excel, because I think anybody can do this. I just think if you look at this and your eyes glaze over and you're not interested, maybe you want to go work with people, right? Maybe you're a people person. So anyways, find out what your interests are, right? And then this one's like a business one, right? Like maybe you do an assessment on like how much you like time management and how much you like public speaking and how much you like managing others, and do you like doing budget and financials and vendor interactions, and are all those things interesting to you, right? Well, these are your skills in them, and then here's your interests in them, right? I might argue a few of these are useful to have even if you're not going to be even if you're not going to deal with people. Like, I still think time management's very important as an engineer. I'm largely left from sun up until sundown. I am largely left unbothered by anybody. If I don't get my stuff done, that's on me, right? Nobody cracks the whip over me. I tell people in the last 20 something years, I've never once been late for work. You know why? Because I show up whenever I want. That's been true in the office, guys, all the way back to Lockheed Martin. I showed up whenever I wanted to. I didn't have a set time to be there. Now, if I had stuff to get done, I had to do it, and I had to put in my, back then, 9-hour days, because we did 9-hour days, and then we had every other Friday off. It was called a 980 schedule. And then you worked what was it? It was you worked 8 9s and then an 8, and you had a day off. So it was 81 plus. Yeah, it was 81. Wait, how was that? Yeah, that was 82 plus 8. That's what it was. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so um, yeah, that sounds right. Oh, well, I've never seen it do that before with the numbers like that. Um, no, it's 81 plus 8. That's what it is. Yeah, that's right. Something like that. Um, it doesn't even matter. 72, something. My point in saying that, I don't know why my brain's not working right now. Is find your things. Time management is very important as an engineer. You got to be able to drive yourself. And then I would argue maybe public speaking, it might not be important at like your junior engineer, your engineer, and your senior engineer levels. But when you start getting to like staff engineering, senior staff, principal, senior principal type engineering roles, like higher level engineering roles, being able to express yourself in front of people and in some cases argue for your point starts to become a more valuable set of skills, right? So more valuable things. So X Shiny, how's it going? It's morning for you? Yep. It's late for me, but the wife's out of town, so I get to, normally Fridays are date night, so I don't get to stream on Fridays, but all right, so self-assessment, right? Do your self-assessment, and then I always tell you guys, you've got this SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and this is typically a thing that like business people do, but I still think that you guys should think about it. And internal are the SW. They're the things that are typically, and with a little asterisk, within your control. Nothing's completely in your control in life, but as much as possible, they're within your control. And then external is outside of your control, but it's like opportunities and threats. But I would say still there's an asterisk there, because opportunities don't come, like I hate to say this, but like opportunities don't come if you're not looking for them. You shouldn't just sit there and wait for like dinner to fall into your mouth. You gotta go do some things. Some people would say like luck favors the prepared, or there's all kinds of terms and terminology and good platitudes on that kind of crap. But my point is, like, your strengths are things that you do well. If you study things well and remember things well, maybe you should be in a role that does that kind of stuff, right? If you know you have a weakness in, like, I have a very bad weakness. I actually learned this from when I did my ASVAB for the Army. The only thing I didn't ace on that thing was this area called coding. Coding isn't necessarily writing code, but it was like skew, you know, like the like a tree would be 1975432, and then 1975432 would be a branch, and 1975432 would be a root. And then like they had this whole skew, like, and then they were like, well, what would be the most logical thing to put for like a twig? And it was like, you know, closer to leaf or down, and I was no good at that. That back and forth stuff like that, it was the only section I didn't finish an ace, right, when I did my ASVAB. And the reason I bring that up is that's something, like, if you told me to go do that now, I would not do it. I would quit. I wouldn't do that type of work. I can't do that type of work. It would literally break my brain. So I won't do it. It's one of my weaknesses. Some of you hate reading. Well, that's not good for engineering. That doesn't bode well. You got to be able to sit and read technical manuals and read stuff online and stuff. But if your strengths are sitting around and reading, or your strengths are focusing on puzzles, those are things that will, you know, I think you should lean into those type of roles. Opportunities, again, like networking, find people that you're, you know, similar interests, and then hang out. I know a lot of the guys in our Discord are constantly talking in like the jobs channel, and like I find jobs, and I have people that I connected with and that I know personally. I try to only share jobs if I know the recruiter or the person that's posted it personally. So when you guys see jobs show up like in the Discord, I almost always can at least get you in contact with those people. And if they respond or not, I don't know, man. Like recruiters on LinkedIn, I think are like, I don't know. People connect with me, and they're like, for recruitment opportunities, and then I'll send them people, or I'll ask them questions about a role with their company, and they won't even get back to me. and then I just unconnect with them or whatever, because like I'm not interested in more friends. I have plenty of friends, guys. I have plenty of professional connections I've really worked with, right? If the person connected with me to do networking and then doesn't want to network, then I'm not going to deal with them, right? If I'm a better networker as an engineer than they are as a recruiter, then I don't know what to tell them. All right, anyways, so, and then threats. There's market saturation, man. I know, like, I saw a thing a while ago about, they were talking about how all these FANG companies had laid off all these people, and it had drove market saturation for like software engineers, and it's sometimes hard to get into different industries. I don't think there's market saturation for Linux engineers. I just don't think people are connecting with companies well. I don't think people are doing a good job of assessing what they need to do to get those roles. Good question, or good evening. What do you think about AI and where it's going with IT? I see AI a lot, and one of our guys that does AI the most is probably Fisherman, who's actually one of my mods up there. He deals with AI professionally. He works it into stuff that he solutions for customers as a solutions architect. But I will say this: AI has been great for kind of sitting side saddle and being like a junior engineer and like a gopher for people. Like, it goes for this and goes for that and helps you like produce workable code pretty quickly. But I don't see it like taking jobs anytime soon. I'll give you guys an example real quick. We have had the ability, so as I do high performance compute, right? Linux specifically, but mostly high performance compute systems. And I've been doing that for 22 years or so now, right? The entirety of the time that I've done Linux, I've had the ability within systems to fail them over, to stone at the node and take it down and then bring it back up or let it come up when it gets working. And the other system can be aware of it and fail back. So I've had the ability to like have automations that fail nodes over and keep the system running and then fail back immediately without human intervention. And do you know that like to this day, we still don't ever run that? We never run failback without full like run through of system checks and just like sometimes regression analysis and just different things. We'll do what's sometimes called war checks on a server, and war checks are just like, is the server ready for war? Is the server ready to get out there and take the load back from the other node? Now, I'm not saying like a bot couldn't do that or an AI couldn't do that or whatever. I'm just saying in all my time of doing this, we've had all those capabilities. We've always had it off. So I'm going to be interested to see when somebody does flip that on. And like, we even saw, I don't know if any of you guys still use X out there, but they said recently, oh, we're going to be flipping completely over for this Grok tool to do all of your news feeds. And immediately people politically are like, I only see the other side. I only see the other side. I mean that, people are mad about that. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I just don't think like, I know you're not probably trying to be a doomsdayer about this, but I'm just saying like everybody's been saying like all the jobs are going away the entirety of my career. And I'm 44 and I'd still say I'm like 15 years the junior to most of like the Linux and Unix guys that I know. I am still not an old dude in Unix and Linux because the dudes I know that have been doing it forever. The job hasn't fundamentally changed, which, I mean, yeah, the tools have changed and the methods by which we boot systems and the RAM's gotten bigger and the storage has gotten bigger. It's still just input, process, output at the end of the day. Literally every single thing is that. And then everything's running as a process with a server, anyway, so I think you should do a SWOT analysis, guys. I really do. I think if you say, Scott, I'm adrift and I have nowhere to anchor myself to, I would start by sitting down with a piece of paper and saying, what do I do well? What do I want to do? What do I do well in business, and what do I want to do? Right? This is where I would start. And this is kind of what a SWOT analysis looks like. Write down your strengths. Strengths. I can bench 315 pounds. Good. Put it up there. Who cares? You got to take your wins where you can get them, right? I don't know if I can still bench 315, but my max ever was 405, but that was in the Army many years ago. Right? And then it's like, so then weaknesses. What are your weaknesses? You guys ever seen Ron? You guys know who Ron Swanson is? Weak-willed men and cowardice. He's from Parks and Rec, right? Anyway, so that's that. And then let's go back to what we were actually doing then, which that was just an aside to the whole thing. We were looking for jobs, and we were looking for some of the things. And I said that, what do you want to do? Figure out what you are good at, what you like to do. That's fine. And then strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? So do those things. Figure out the things that work. Xshunya, I did move the home lab to Proxmox. I'm not completely off of XCPNG yet. I do still have that around, but I did move to Proxmox. Where's that at? Yeah, so I do have Proxmox. I've only built out the one hostbox server, and I've moved my home Samba and NFS shares over there. So that thing is up and running. I did get, so the day that we did it, I also got Ansible running I can deploy nodes in here as needed. I have not connected all the Werewolf over there. I haven't done all of that stuff yet. I do need to do all of that though still, Xshunya. So that's all stuff that I need to get to. I just haven't gotten around to. In fact, it's funny, my system was supposed to come on the 21st and it came on like the 16th, so I was all happy and I put it in, I got it all working, and then I really, besides getting it up and running, I haven't really done anything with it yet. So, and then really tonight, I'm just doing this to talk you guys through looking for jobs, and then I gotta work on Unit 5 for the automation course, right? The automation course is coming tomorrow, so I got to get that worked on. But what are the Linux skills that companies are looking for? Well, okay, look, I can tell you guys this without even opening any of these up. It's going to be, it's going to be troubleshooting. It's going to be monitoring. I can tell you this without even opening any of them. It's going to be probably taking calls, help desk calls, probably user stuff. But let's say troubleshooting, monitoring. It's going to be probably booting systems, right? Watching them boot. Although we could argue most of that would be doing troubleshooting. It's just going to be patching and updating, right? Configuring. I would say, like, without even looking at them, that's probably going to be every one of the jobs. But let's go look. Transition to Proxmox, tracing. Please play playlist. Yeah, Xshunya, I might make a playlist. I might put it in. I could probably do something like that. Yeah, when I'm working on those, yeah. I have it recorded for sure, so I definitely have it for you guys. All I really did was I posted the pictures as I was doing it, and then we were kind of looking at the pictures, and then we really just got in there and built it out. And we kind of did some of it manually. And then we got the Ansible all written up where this is the start of the Ansible here. If anybody cares, where is that? Like, this is the start of our getting it to at least deploy a node. And I actually have a whole bunch more to add to this. And then we're going to start doing some environment files, and we're going to start deploying these so that they're connected to from the proxy server. So when people come in, proxy Bastion, whatever, when they come in through the Bastion, they'll be able to hop up. By the way, one of our guys, Fisherman, put together a nice little access. So if you guys are in the Discord, right, and you go down to the Prolog lab environment, you can always go to the pinned messages, and you can see that you can add an SSH key, and then you can get access to the Prolog Bastion and into our lab environment. Okay, so that's there for people that want that. Get out of here. What were we doing? Okay, so I looked up earlier today. I looked up Linux administration in Phoenix, Arizona. That's all I did. And it's funny, like, if you guys go on search, like, job search sites, you're going to get more and more ads for job search stuff. And it's funny for me, people think I'm always looking. These algorithms, they think I'm always looking, even on LinkedIn, because I'm always clicking on jobs and stuff. But I'm mostly doing it for, like, my college students and for, like, the people in the Prolog. I look at jobs all the time. I'm not looking for work. Like, I actually would argue, I have my normal job. I have my teaching gig that I do with the college, and then I'm doing some consulting on the side for a friend's company to get their SOC compliance, right? And SOC. Anyway, so they, I don't have enough time. I don't want more work, right? So where I'm going with that is I'm looking at jobs here for you guys, and then obviously it just starts popping up like, hey, so this guy's looking for work or whatever. I get emails all the time too, so it's crazy. All right, ServiceNow is all over the place, but it looks like they're also remote, so that got tagged. But we're gonna skip the ServiceNow stuff, and let's go look at, this is remote or in Irvine, but this is a senior Linux admin. So what do they want for this senior Linux admin guy? They're paying okay. That's for somebody they're calling a senior. That's probably about mid-range pay for senior Linux sysadmin. So that's not terrible. That's U.S. People outside the U.S., you'd have to translate that to your thing. They want you to do incidents, right? So that's troubleshooting, but we might also call incident management its own thing, because incident management is technically a separate set of skills. But they want you to deal with SLAs. So to deal with SLAs, you need to know what an SLA is, right? Service level agreement, typically internal. Linux people, we almost exclusively are dealing internal customers. So dev teams, production support teams, those kind of things. We're dealing directly with them, internal to the company. So our service level agreements tend to be agreements between managers. Sometimes there's some give on those, sometimes there's not, depending on how big the organization is and how structured it is. Also platform engineer, DevOps engineer, site reliability. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yeah. There's a lot of places to fit in with Linux. And I would tell you guys, one of the things that's always across the board gonna be something that they use. They want a problem solver in their organization, so they ask for a Linux engineer. And it's because a lot of times, by nature of somebody who would be a Linux engineer or a Linux admin working towards engineering roles, you're going to find that those people like solving problems. They don't always like having problems. Like, I don't like having a bunch of problems in front of me that I got to solve, but I do like solving problems. It's like a core part of my nature. In fact, I have a bunch of things. I don't have them here at home. I don't have any readily available that I can show you here at home. I can show you one that was always kind of funny. But I always have like little things to mess with on my desk, like little puzzles and stuff. One of my favorite ones, this was given to me by my wife. I think you guys should be able to see that. It says 1, 3, and 5 minutes, and it is this. And when people come to my desk, I just turn this over like this. And my boss would turn around and come to my desk, and I would just turn this thing over. I would just turn this over like this. And he would go, "The hell's that?" And I go, and he goes, "Are you doing that for me?" And I'm like, and he goes, "I'm your boss. I don't have to adhere to that." And I'm like, "You can see what happens when we hit 5 minutes." Because then he would ask me, he's like, "Do I get the 1, the 3, or the 5 minutes?" And I said, "You're going to find out depending on what you ask me here." And then he goes, "What happens if I run out of time?" And I would just turn away from him and go back to work. My boss used to get mad at me so much. I had a good relationship with that boss. He actually brought me over to that company to be his tech lead. But I think you should have good rapport with people like that. My point in saying that is, like, I'm a big fan of like having puzzles, because it traps engineers at your desk, and then you can ask them questions about stuff. All right, here's troubleshoot and escalate issues. So troubleshooting, it says escalating, right? Whoops. What do you guys think? I mean, if you're the senior, let's say you're the senior Linux admin in the company, you're the person that people go to. What does escalation mean in that sense? What do you guys think? Because I can tell you, this is its own skill, man. This is like its own. I think this belongs in its own like category outside of all this. Has anybody here ever had to do this? Has anybody here ever had to do vendor management and like interacting with vendors? Yeah. Who, like, Escalation sometimes is putting in a ticket to Red Hat. It's sometimes putting in a ticket to Slurm or whoever you think. Yeah, when to open the support case. And I've shown you guys often, like, if you're going to open a support case, I don't care what you're doing. If you're going to open a support case, these are two things you need to show. And people probably think, oh man, Scott's showing those same two stupid commands again. He always shows those same two stupid commands. If you don't put those in a support case when you open a support case, well, and the version of whatever software you're probably asking about, but those two things are central to every other thing that somebody might want to know about the system. You know, if I'm going to go look through, so you're doing like OFED drivers with a specific ConnectX card from InfiniBand. And so now we got an RDMA pass-through and OpenIBD drivers that were compiled for a specific kernel. And then we've got this, I'd also include the OpenIBD or OFED drivers as well, that version, but that's neither here nor there. If we have all these things working and I can't get it to work and I can't get the speeds that I expect and like all these different things are happening in the system, and I ask the vendor, and they're going to, literally the person that's like kind of like assigned to your case is just going to take that back to the engineers. And the engineers literally can't do anything to help you if you're not going to tell them the version of the OS you're on, the version of the ConnectX card you're on. Like these things, you just have to gather them and give them to them. Because once they do, and I've worked with really good engineers like this, they'll spin up an environment that looks just like yours on the same exact hardware, and they'll see if they can recreate the problem. And once they can work to solve the problem. If they can't recreate the problem, then they're just looking at your logs and your stuff. But most of the time, good engineers that I see like working on supporting specific software, they will spin up the exact version of that error, get it to happen again, and then they'll go drive through to fix it or whatever. And there's obviously all kinds of different workflows for that. But my point is, those things are very important for like troubleshooting and escalating. Look at this. It's almost like I knew. I did not look at this job before this, but it's almost like I knew exactly what they were going to say. Proactively monitor. So what do we monitor? Health. And health is typically, so health, capacity. Yeah, and then that's stability. Stability, availability. I don't know if I spelled it right. And reliability. Right? So capacity, so health is going to be uptime, logs, right? And, I'd say uptime, logs, that kind of stuff. Capacity is always 0 to 100% of utilization. Typically, and you guys have heard me say this before, the big four. Does anybody want to try to guess what the big four is in Linux? Or this isn't even Linux, this is computer science. What are the big four? And bonus, does anybody remember them in order? What are the big four of a server? Of any server? I don't care if it's a Linux or Windows server. Why is stability, availability, and capacity? Oh, I don't know, just because they had performance and capacity to ensure that. So. They kind of said to ensure those things. So that's why I put it underneath that. So performance and capacity. It doesn't really matter where I put it. But does anybody know what the big four are? What do you guys think? Those are the big four of systems administration. Those four, those are the big. Now there are other. This can be, generally speaking, right? Could generally be speaking storage, like, and this could also be broken down into non-volatile and volatile storage, I guess, if we will. But let's just say it kind of like that. We think of it like disk, really. Because actually, I would call other types of storage outside of the system a different problem, I guess. Let's say. This is kind of the things that I think about. performance is I would say high and low watermarks, but those are also kind of capacity, right? In my mind, right? And then what else do they say? So they say kernel upgrades patching. So kernel. What do they say? Vulnerability management. So you're probably going to get with that like reports on CVSS scores. And a lot of times for me, that's like some agent maybe. And common agents in the industry that I know of are like CrowdStrike has the Falcon sensor, and then Qualys also has the Qualys agent. And either of those could be running on your system, scanning and making sure that you're not, at some specific, vulnerability level, and then aggregate vulnerability levels of your systems as well, right? Those kind of things. What do they say? Hardening. That's a good one. So I don't even have directly security, but I would say configuring would be hardening. They have access control. And I might say hardening actually is security baselines. But that's fine. And then what's security baselines? They don't actually say. They just say compliance framework. But I'm going to posit that it's normally like your CIS benchmarks and or your STIGs. And a lot of times you can get a lot of that done by OpenSCAP, which is a tool, or OpenSCAP Workbench, and those are tools that'll help you with that. And then I deal heavily, some of you guys that have worked with me or know me from the group know that I deal heavily with STIGs. STIGs are a huge part of like what I do day to day as a like security and configuration engineer on high performance compute type systems. STIGs probably dominate. Well, right now not as much, but I'd say most of the time they dominate more than like 60% of my time. I'm constantly looking at them and ensuring, and I use the same Ansible playbooks and I do all that kind of stuff, and automation's great for that, but you still have to deploy that in the system and make sure it works correctly and all that kind of stuff. So, and it changes every time new OSs and versions of OSs come out, so there's that. They want you to act as a technical advisor for level 1 and 2 administrators developing technical runbooks and knowledge-based articles. So they don't really have it. I don't have it here yet, but I would say that this is huge. They want you to documentation, and maybe even in this case, runbooks. So runbooks are what to do in the case of an incident or some thing happens, and then documentation. And that is two things. It's writing and reviewing, typically. Right? Those are things that you do. I swear, availability? Oh, it looks weird to me. And then booting systems. So participate in lead initiatives, architecture reviews, infrastructure modernization, and enterprise risk assessments. So we don't have that necessarily here. And then here's your incident management down here. So let's do architectural reviews. So I might almost call some of that configuring, but enterprise risk assessment. So let's just say work with other teams for that, but I'd say that that's important. And then major incidents, engage stakeholders, root cause analysis. So RCAs, do you know how to do a root cause analysis? Have you ever done one of those? Like, do you have methodologies for root cause analysis? We have, what's the name of that? Well, I guess we'll just call it fishbone diagram. There are that's a methodology asking why 5 times. I have an actual talk on that, right? But root cause analysis, right? And then what they said here was the other one was permanent solutions, right? for the things, right? And these are like, look, this, I just got these from the first one, right? I just got these from the first job that we looked at here. Skills of qualification. What do they want you to know? They want you to have 8+ years as Linux and understand physical and virtual environments. So they want you to know physical. What do you need to know about them? I'd be willing to bet it's, booting. So starting up. Maybe we say this is, I guess you would say maybe operating systems, like operating of the systems or operations. So you need to be able to start up. You need to be able to connect to. You need to deploy. I'm sure that these are all things that you need to be able to do. And it's the same thing. It's the same exact 3 for virtual environments. Can you start up a server? Can you deploy it? Can you connect to it? Right? Because I always tell you guys, if you're working on a server or something, if I'm working on one of my servers in my environment and I lose network to P01 Jump 02, do I have an out-of-band management to go control it? And I should be able to. I should be able to come over here. I should be able to go find it right here, P01 Jump 02. I should be able to get into his console here. And I should know what it means to be at a console. I should understand what it means to be connected over SSH. Like I should understand those kind of connection. I would say understanding a connection they probably don't even mention here because they're assuming you're senior. You know how to do that kind of stuff, right? They want you to understand Linux security methodologies and hardening procedures and best practices. So they want you to know probably those CIS benchmarks or those STIGs. They want you to understand internals, process management, memory handling, kernel tuning, and capacity planning. So what are all of these things and how do they work, right? What is the actual thing? So when we talk about capacity planning, we're not just asking to get faster hard drives because faster hard drives sound cool in the next servers. We know that our system doesn't use, maybe our system is designed, like in a high performance compute sense, to be mostly CPU and memory. And the individual nodes don't really even have to use their disks. In fact, I have completely diskless systems. They don't even have disks in them. And you say like they literally can't. Nope, they don't physically write down to anything, because that's not how they're designed. They don't run like that. They cannot boot from a disk. They can't do it. They only can boot over the network. And the reason we do that is because that wasn't a capacity. That wasn't something that was needed to make the workflows that they were being procured for make sense. So we think about things like that. Okay, evaluate and maintain server storage and other IT standards for enterprise supporting products and services. So storage, right? Like this is big. Being able to connect to storage. I might even call it under operating let's say operating the systems, because I don't want people to think I'm talking about operating systems there. I'm not talking about the operating systems themselves, although you do need to understand those things for sure. So I'm not going to add that necessarily, but hands-on experience with automation. You got to know your automation stuff, right? You got to be able to automate this stuff. And they mention Ansible, Chef, and Puppet. But I'm just going to say this. Whenever I see these three together like this, I wonder how much this was written by like a manager. I wonder how much this is just like cookie cutter from like an HR management perspective, and how much like a team lead or a Linux person actually wrote this. Because I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen all three of those exist in the same place at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think they want Ansible and Chef and Puppet. I've only ever seen, and Chef and Puppet are so uncommon for me to see now that AWS even used to have their OpsWorks that was designed to work with them. They discontinued that like a year or two ago. So they don't even accept new customers into that for Chef or Puppet extension up into the cloud. So like when I say it's like not being used much, it's not. Ansible's king, right? Like I mean, as far as like if you ever look at the little Gartner quadrants, Ansible's up there. Ansible and Terraform. But I'm just saying, I don't, I have a hard time believing anybody would want all three of those when they do different things. They are not equal. Chef and Puppet and Salt are all agent based and can do things automatically. Ansible is not agent based. Ansible just connects and runs when you tell it to. Ansible is much more by itself analogous to like a bash script than it is those other tools, right? But okay, they're automation tools. They do what they need to do. Analyze server and storage characteristics, CPU, behavior, latency, transmission speed, packet loss, and throughput. A lot of that stuff, you just got to know how to use your tools. So I'm going to pull up another slide deck that I have. Where's he at? It's over here. This comes from a talk that I do every now and then with the Professional Linux Users Group who, a lot of times I just talk to people here like you guys are all part of the group. And well, it's because you can be part of the group if you want. You just got to go join the Discord. But this is what when I talk about like Linux systems administration and then those topics, it kind of looks like this. Here's some administration tasks. You got to be able to turn stuff on and off. You got to be able to maintain an inventory, add, change, remove. You need to be able to install and update software on your systems. You need to be able to configure repositories so we have a place we trust. You have to configure software to work within the cluster. So like I can't just drop Slurm on a server and go, we're cool guys. No, Slurm has to then be configured to work across the gamut of the entire system, right? Responding to incidents, system level failure, all systems fail over time, guys. That is the truth of engineering. I know that there's philosophies out there that say systems don't fail over time, but I can assure you, empirically as engineers, we see all systems that we design to fail over time. That's what we see. So system level failures are going to happen. How do we deal with it? High availability, these kind of things. What are security incidents? Security incidents are anything that cross the line of three. There's three things that we deal with: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The thing you're going to deal with the most as a administrator early on in your career is that availability. We care about uptime. Uptime is king. Confidentiality of systems, yeah, we try to keep them locked down. That's part of that senior role we were just looking at. And integrity of systems, it's tremendously important. The system's nothing if it doesn't have integrity. But all three of those things, when they are breached in some way, become security incidents. So you might say, don't all incidents that take downtime then become security incidents? Technically they do, yes, because then we need to analyze them for why they happened. Chris said, I guess they could have a lot of legacy stuff with Puppet and Chef. Yeah, that's true, Chris. In fact, I tell my college students, and I tell you guys too, like, you're going to deal with old stuff in your career. Sometimes I pull stuff up and people are like, I'm never going to see that. And it's like, oh, you will. I know people that just last year got off of RHEL 5. And you say, really? Really? Yep. Just got off of RHEL 5. Government stuff. Just got off of RHEL 5. They couldn't get off. It was Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL. Things not picking up what I'm saying. They just got off of it because they couldn't support, their Oracle couldn't move. So, they had to do some stuff. But to my point, right? Administration tasks, we do observing, we benchmark, and we tune systems. These are really the things that we do in systems. We observe and we change things. We can also benchmark, which is like load testing and stuff like that. But we talk about how that works. Really, the reason I pulled this up was to show you guys like this next part here, which are the commands. And then this, which is when we're talking observability, we're talking utilization, saturation, and errors. So use methodology is a fun methodology, utilization, saturation, errors across the big four: CPU, memory, disk, and network. And this is kind of a favorite little one that I show you guys for that. So, actually, yeah, I wasn't saying that it's bash based. I'm saying it's much more like bash in that it just sits there until you execute it. Yeah, hopefully that clarifies that. I wasn't saying that it's in any way other than that similar. All right, so this is like the observability things that I think that you guys should be somewhat familiar with. Okay, this is up in the Discord as well if you guys need that. They want you to have familiarity with complex multi-site and global network design, multi-layer switch environments, firewalls, VPNs, load balancers, and DP. They want you to understand networking. And this is something I often tell you guys, like, you're never in your career. I'm in the hundreds of thousands now Linux boxes in my career. And I'm not just talking ones that have gone off and come back on with stateless nodes. I'm talking like actual named systems. I'm in the hundreds of thousands. Maybe not quite at 200 yet, but in the hundreds of thousands. And what I'm going to tell you is that you have never built a Linux box in your career for an enterprise that's not on the network. Never once. Now, you might build your own Linux boxes at home in the lab and play with them, and they're not connected out to the world. But you're never going to do it professionally. Everything will touch a network. So, this is senior stuff, so they want you to have a little bit more senior skills. But I'm going to tell you that knowing how your system connects and some of that low level, maybe even doing your TCP dump, throwing it out to a file and then looking at it in Wireshark and seeing how your system communicates is tremendously valuable. I think I was telling you guys a while back, I was working on a cluster for a college that I was embedded with. And this college had, we were putting in RHEL 9. So we were on RHEL 7 and RHEL 8. And we were bringing in RHEL 9. RHEL 9 was relatively new at the time. This was about a year and a half ago. RHEL 9 was kind of newish. And it was Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It wasn't Rocky or Alma. It wasn't some flavor of RHEL. It was actual paid for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And we were doing, so often you have in a high performance compute cluster, you have your external network. And then you have your back-end storage network. And your back-end storage network is almost always some kind of high speed, in our case, like ConnectX cards and InfiniBand. So we're using InfiniBand everywhere, right? Just track on that for a second. But we're doing IP over InfiniBand, right? So IPOB. It's IP addressing over InfiniBand. Now, InfiniBand will talk without IP, but because it's easier to map users and hosts and XCAT and all these different types of tools, we use IP addresses to just talk over InfiniBand. It's just easier. RHEL 9 was coming in, going to our storage and going, I don't know what's going on here in this high-speed network. And it was ARP bombing, so Address Resolution Protocol, bombing that network. And that network was crashing with RHEL 9 on it. This back-end high-speed storage network that had worked forever, when we put 2 RHEL boxes on it, was bringing that network to its knees and just completely, like, catastrophically stopping our back-end storage in this high-performance compute cluster with RHEL 9. Just because those systems couldn't understand ARP. So we had to tune down ARP at the kernel parameters to work the way that we expected, right? And we talk about this kind of stuff. You can do sysctl-a for, and you can look at all the things that are allowed to happen with ARP on your system. Now, these systems would have had an InfiniBand, an IB interface. I don't have an IB interface here, but they would have had an IB interface, and then we could have mucked around with how that worked, right? So, yeah, it was at layer 2, absolutely. ARP. ARP is Address Resolution Protocol is your system asking to map your MAC addresses back to the IP addresses at layer 3. So it helps your system to communicate without having to leave the VLAN, right? Or without having to leave the local network, which typically is VLAN constrained in most of the world. It doesn't have to be, but it is most of the time, especially when you're doing secure things. So anyways, I don't know where I was going with that, but you need to know your networking. And I give you guys in the Discord, so for people that are in the Discord, pop up here, you go up to you just go to networking. And in networking, I sometimes mention, people talk about different stuff up here. I sometimes mention this book that I like to show you guys. It is called, it's a red book by IBM on networking. I know it's not too far up. But I used to do little questions in here for you guys with it, but it didn't have a lot of traction, so I didn't keep doing it. But where's that? Yeah. So stuff like this, I ask questions in here like, page 63 to 139 of this red book here. I can link it for you guys that want it. So it's there and it's there. And in here, I said, hey, go describe these protocols, look at them, see how they work, understand the RFCs that are related to this. And the book is a little dated, but none of that stuff has changed fundamentally. None of those concepts are wrong in that book. And I often tell you guys when we go, I'm not going to go look at it right now, but it's somewhere between like the first and the maybe 172nd or something pages that I think you guys should read those first 100 and something pages for basic networking knowledge. Then there's a bunch of other stuff that digs down into the layer 2 and 3 routing and switching and spanning tree protocol down at layer 2 and how we make networks act logically even though they have no logical hierarchy. There's things that happen that don't matter too much to an admin. However, if you were going for that senior role, I might tell you to read all that book. But just because look at all this crap they want you to know over here, right? They want you to be familiar with all that. They want you to understand web applications and relational database architecture. So that means you're probably going to be supporting customer-facing web apps. So a lot of the stuff that I deal with as far as web applications go is, number of connections that they have, TCP connections, how much they're utilizing their, are they dropping TCP packets coming in or not? Are they having errors, that kind of stuff? Is my system behind a set of load balancers? Is it something that is going to be one of many? And if it experiences high load, I know to go look at some of those other components. And am I in charge of those components, or do I have to ask some other team for support on that kind of stuff? And then they want you to understand relational database architectures, probably because if they're behind web application servers, they're going to be OLTP databases. There's two types. Look, there's thousands of types of databases, but there's two types that we care about from like an admin engineering standpoint, like Linux side of things. There's online transaction processing where they're doing fast transaction of like purchasing sneakers and putting stuff in their shopping carts and all these kind of things. That's online transaction processing. And then there's kind of back end bigger churning through the data, which is OLAP, online analytics processing. And from my side of things, those are the only two I really care about. If they're doing it in Redis or ScyllaDB or MySQL or MariaDB or Postgres or all these, literally we just sit here and name databases until our faces turn blue. That's not that important, right? Shredark said, I had a question not related to the current topic. You can ask whatever you want. In fact, if you do an exclamation mark ask, it'll actually stop me from talking for a second, because I am talking a lot right now. Let me move that up a little bit so you guys can see. There you go. Boom. Now you guys can see yourselves talking. Knowledge and writing code. So, okay, look, they want you to be able to do things that most people that are senior Linux admins can do. They want you to be able to put together shell scripts, Python, Perl, YAML, something, because you're probably going to be supporting those from your team, right? I told you guys like years ago, or people that have been around know, like years ago I went to a team, this was 2016, and me and the other senior guy, we both were Perl guys. We wrote Perl. Not exclusively, but I'd say I was like a 90-10 Perl bash. I wrote all Perl. And he and I both wrote Perl, and we both liked it. But, and that's P-E-R-L, by the way. But our team was mostly junior, almost all juniors besides he and I. And, no, we had two others that were pretty senior as well. But they could support Shell. They understood Shell, bash. And we were bringing in Ansible, so we basically, he and I agreed, kind of like a gentleman's agreement, we were going to only support the things that we had, and we were going to move everything forward in Ansible. And that's not exactly how it happened, but generally that's how it happened. My brother was also on the team, and he was a big part of that as well. So they want you to know, look... do I know about Thanks to Canary Honeypot? Could share some advice on honeypots in large environments. how to start with and look for that stuff. Yeah, so I know a fair deal about honeypots. I was writing my dissertation on them a while ago, um, or they were a potential topic of mine long ago. Um, I don't know about Thinkst canary honeypot, if that's a very specific one. I don't know that. I don't know about this one, but let's go look at them real quick. Oh yeah, that's fine. I don't know how this one works in relation to other ones. Ignored alerts help nobody. Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know their pricing or anything. $, 7,500 is not super unreasonable. Yeah, for a company, that's not much. That's not super expensive compared to what you're probably getting. Okay. Canary console. Okay. I mean, I'll be honest without knowing. I mean, I imagine they're doing honey potting, honey netting. They're calling themselves Canary. So, guys, Canary is a very specific type of security apparatus. It sits there and waits for something to alert it, and then it just starts sending alerts in the network. So canaries, often we would put canaries. We would just use like little either virtual boxes up in the out of the way at the top of a network, and if they ever got hit, if they ever got scanned on any of their ports, then they would alert us, and that's what we used to use to know that people weren't scanning our environments or whatever. Device personalities that can be customized and focus on high fidelity alert. Yeah, so I mean that's all super useful, especially as a company gets bigger. I think there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, if your organization needs it, it needs it, right? Especially if it's got a security posture or security policy that says we're doing that, then it has to do it, right? For me, my security is typically around bastioning users and then tracking what they do through a bastion, right? Like making sure I understand, what they're doing and how they're messing around in our environment and that kind of stuff. But yeah, if they have good device, like, because sometimes people want, okay, so they're calling themselves a canary, but if they're also acting as like a honeypot, honey net for other people, what that does is it responds to requests and pretends to be some server, pretends to be vulnerable, pretends to be whatever. It will even allow people to connect to it and read tokens off it, so they think that they've got valuable data, and then it'll let them read information from APIs that are generated, and it'll allow users to think that they're gathering real data, but they're gathering inert, useless data, right? In some ways, they're doing what if any of you guys have ever heard of poisoning the pond. So early on, in the early, so I've been on the internet since '93, right? I was still a kid, but in the late '90s, we were all on downloading songs off the internet, right? And what they did was they found out that instead of just always trying to copyright and shut down all these sites that were popping up and letting people download music, what they did instead, and this is an interesting thing, they did a thing called poisoning the pond. And what they did was they took, so for a certain bit rate, a song might be, let's say a song is 2 minutes and 37 seconds long. That would be a short song, but let's say 2 minutes and 37 seconds long. These companies, especially like the people who produce the music and were making the money off it, they would put a whole bunch of versions of that song up at 2 minutes and 37 seconds, same exact bit sampling rates, nothing that would make you think it wasn't like all the other ones. But of the maybe 20 that were there, only 1 or 2 would be the real song being seeded by real people. The other 18 were all fakes. And when you downloaded them, they sounded just like the song, and then there'd be a siren, like a loud, high-pitched siren or a phone ringing. and it would absolutely ruin the song. You couldn't even, you just throw the whole song away. But you just wasted 4 hours of your time downloading that song. 'Cause that's what it used to take back in the day. So they used to do that. Anyways, that's exactly the same idea of like a honeypot and a honey net. Is we're wasting, if you look at the diamond intrusion model, it's their technology infrastructure against our capacity to defend. And if we can slow them down and make them slog through a pond to get to us, I mean, you know, it slows them down. It's the same exact way. And, you know, look, guys, I'm no microbiologist, but if any of you guys ever go read any papers on how they cured AIDS, anybody here familiar with how AIDS works? The HIV, before it gets to full-blown AIDS, the human immunodeficiency virus or whatever. What it does is it attacks your T cells. Well, your T cells are like the generals. They're standing back here making your white blood cells fight, but the HIV would go and it would hit the T cells and it would blow them up, right? If you guys have ever seen that, I remember in the 90s, we were always watching videos on it as a kid. But hold on, if you ever go read these papers, it's really interesting. What they said was they were like, well, shit, a virus has one shot. It's got a one single shot payload, right? So why don't we just blow up a bunch of little T cells in your body that are like Sherman's tanks? They're not real T cells. And there'll be 1,000 of them standing next to the one T cell. And when that virus goes, and it does its payload on the wrong one, it'll just die. It won't make 1,000 of itself and go hit the other ones. It'll just die. And that's the solution to HIV, if you guys don't know. You never get rid of it completely. You just keep it manageable because it's dealing with so many decoys. That's the actual solution. You guys go look that up. It's actually kind of funny. Where I'm going with all that, I don't even know where we got on this, but we were talking about I don't know, something far afield. Anyways, knowledge of analytics and Grafana. You got to have some ability to get into these tools, guys. And I will tell you that one of my favorite ones to show people is Grafana is always free. Grafana has a version, and I've been on this one for 5 or 6 years. They've never charged me nothing. It says right here, the actually useful free plan, Grafana free tier. And just to kind of scope this for you guys, because some of you are going to go, well, how big is that? That's big enough for any of your home labs. I'd be shocked if anybody on this stream here has a bigger home lab than what this can handle. And real quick, that's their, this is per day, right? I think that's per day. And what I mean by that is, so it's 50 gigs of logs that you can push up there. Well, your average Linux box, and I've tested this across thousands of machines, if it's not doing anything else, is only making about 8 megs a day of logs. If it's doing web, you're going to have some more, especially if you're kind of popular company. But just the Linux box sitting there doing Linuxy things is making about 8 megs of logs a day. It's not that much. That's okay. That's messages and secure if you're on RHEL. And then over on the Ubuntu side, it's syslog, and they don't use secure. They use syslog, and what's the security one over there? I don't remember what it is. But anyways, those two are the main ones. So yeah. So, where were we at? So, anyways, I think Grafana is a great one to at least go get your hands on. You can build in your home lab. I even have labs up on Killer Coda that show you how to do Grafana, because I think Grafana is super useful. And then, look, they want you to know, you got to know how to use the cloud in some way. And I feel like these two are pretty low at the bottom here, but I'd be willing to bet those are ones that they're really looking for. Because every organization is in one of 3 stages. There's like... There's no organization that I've been to the last 10 years that isn't in one of these 3 categories. They're either planning on moving more to the cloud, they're in the cloud and they're struggling, or they're moving out of the cloud currently. Those are the only 3 things. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen anybody in the cloud completely happy yet. Maybe they exist. You know, maybe some of these guys that work in the cloud all the time could tell us that they're there. But I haven't seen anybody that's perfectly tuned it down the way that they want yet. Right, so that's what it is. We're either moving more out there, we're sticker shocked and not happy, or we're moving stuff back to save money again. We're always in one of those. That's a ebb and flow of systems. They want you to have a bachelor's degree, possibly, or equivalent experience. So bachelor's degree is typically 4 years of school, and a lot of times they will take as an equivalent of every 2 years of school, 1 year in the industry. So They want you to have a bachelor's degree, but often then that would be at least 2 years in the industry. However, they're saying they want you to be senior. We're still on the first one, and they wanted 8 years, if I recall here. Yeah, so they want you to show that you've been doing Linux systems administration, and that's an important. I mean, that's the thing. We were up here. I started out by saying, you got to figure out what you want. You got to learn some Linux. We're talking about learning the Linux now, and then down here, you got to get together a resume. So you got to. Right, you got to be able to fit this all into one page. We have a bunch of resume templates, guys. I can pull up my resume for you guys. My resume template that I use. And then what's this question? Would they accept one in mathematics? Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, typically when they say that, they mean like a STEM. So a lot of times, yeah, computer science, engineering, it almost always means math as well. Math, especially since mathematics, a lot of times you're using supercomputers. So a lot of times that does actually count for that. Let me pull up. This is a generic one that I use. It's my Het resume current generic. I think this one's current. Let's look at this real quick. Where's it at? Where are you coming up? It has chosen to pop up behind everything. This is a generic version of my actual resume. Right? I think as just my own advice, I think a resume should be a page. In the middle of your career as an engineer, somewhere between maybe your 5th and 15th year, I think that you can expand up to 2, 3, 4 pages if you need more to explain what you've done. But then I think as you move, like I'm on like the back end, let's say, of my Linux career, although I could keep doing Linux forever, I think, then I think that you can move back down to one page again. But I think at the start of your career, you want one page. And I think that you should, this is me, right, guys? This is my, take it for what it's worth. I think you should lead with what your best qualifications are for the particular role you're looking for. So for me, I have at the top, like, what I think are the most important things about my career. Like, what I've been doing, like, that's kind of here. And then, like, certification. People care about certifications. I mean, like, I don't think the CISSP made me any better at cybersecurity, but it definitely showed me the body of knowledge around it, and it definitely has opened some doors, especially, like, as an example, when we put in for bids or something with my company, then they can put down the number of people that have CISSPs or the number of people that have certain types of certifications, because that does matter in the industry, and that is a thing that may be a requirement. I've seen that before too with like RHCEs. Some of you guys have RHCEs out there, Red Hat certified engineers, and you have that certification, and then they may need so many of those to be on a project for it to be valid. That's often in government contracting, right? Then I have, maybe some older certifications that I had gotten before in my career. And then I go down to my experience, because I think my experience is the next most important thing that I have. And that experience goes back at least 10 years. But after the most important two, in fact, this one's not even current anymore. I've been working Redline like a year and a half, so this is not very updated. But this one here needs to move down to only be down here in my, because this was my insurance one here, right? And then my government contractor one needs to move back up, and that's with Redline and doing all that kind of stuff. And then the least important and least interesting things that I've done as far as being a systems engineer and systems, whatever you want to call me, for a role, is my education. I don't think my education's nearly as interesting to somebody that wants to hire me to do Linux work as it might be to maybe like somebody else. So there's that. Hey, Shy Hat, how's it going? Hopefully this stuff's useful to you guys. And for raiders that don't know me, we hang out around here and talk about getting into Linux roles. So what I've been doing today is just, I opened up a notepad. This is Notepad++. Over on the right, we were looking at jobs that are out there. We're actually still on our first job. And we were talking about, doing a self-assessment to see what you want to do. Let me get this out of the way. Do a self-assessment about what you want to do. Learning some Linux skills. We were finding out Linux skills and kind of talking to those. And then I was just on getting together a resume and being able to fit it all into one page Lead, and I was saying then also lead with what is asked for by that job, right? Does that job want skills? Do they want education? I think you should lead by what is lead with what is the closest to that thing. I do always put my GitHub on there. I do always put, Killer Coda Labs, because sometimes that's interesting. Maybe somebody, especially in senior staff and principal roles, they want you to train junior engineers. So if you can show training and stuff that you've built and things that you've done, a lot of times that goes back a lot for that. So, yeah, but I appreciate you, Raiden. We're just talking systems and stuff. This is actually a de-identified version of my own stuff, right? That's not my real cell phone. You can call 867-5309 if you want, but it's more of a song. And then anything else on here is just de-identified stuff about me, although it's not hard to find out who I am on LinkedIn and that kind of stuff. So we were looking at this, and then I think you should practice interview skills. Where would you get those? Join groups with similar interests. We do sometimes, we haven't done one in a while, but we used to do interview practice for people. I was thinking about doing interview practice again, but there's Discords, there's Slacks, there's Usenets. There's all kinds of groups where you can go and hang out with like-minded people. One place that I think is good to get interview skills if you just struggle and don't have anybody else to work with is find Toastmasters. Everybody I know that does public speaking or is that I'm like, damn, that person's pretty good as a public speaker, was a Toastmaster. Like every single time, like I'm kind of like struck by somebody's public speaking, I find out later that they were a Toastmaster, almost universally. In fact, the only reason I can talk in front of people is I was a Toastmaster in high school. I did a marketing club. My friend Jared, his dad, so my best friend growing up, his dad was our marketing teacher, and he made us do Toastmaster. We had to get up, we had to give speeches, we had to prepare speeches, we had to do speeches that were topical that we weren't prepared for. There were all kinds of formats of speeches, but I would never have gotten up in front of people ever and been a college professor or anything if it wasn't for the fact that I had done Toastmasters. So it's like it's vastly and greatly changed my career path over the years. As an engineer, I would have been fine as an engineer because you don't have to bug me. I can just sit in a closet and do my work. But like being able to talk to people and get out there and get on meetings and that kind of stuff, never had a problem with it, right? But that's something that you might have to practice. Some people, this is an interesting thing about practicing interview skills, and I often tell the guys down in Discord this is a truth of there is no place else on planet Earth where you are allowed or expected to brag about yourself, except in an interview. So you're not skilled. I can almost guarantee you're not skilled in bragging about yourself. If you are, you probably don't have a lot of people that like you because you sit around and brag about yourself. But this is like the only place where you're allowed to brag. In fact, you have to. You're selling yourself to somebody. Like your things that you don't really think of as accomplishments because they were just something you did years ago. You have to put those first and like hold up these little trinkets and be like, these are the interesting things I've done. And right, that's that. What's this question? Currently reading up on Linux Bible Virtual Lab Setup for Fedora and Red Hat and listening to YouTube vids. Thanks for the insight. Nice. Yeah, hopefully this stuff's useful. What are the thoughts on AWS going down? Ignacio, I don't know if you saw one of our guys, a few of our guys work at AWS, in case you guys don't know. And one of them posted, I think he did it in Cloud Technologies. This is where did he put it? Maybe he put it in Tech News. I might have to find where he put it. But he put when the server went down, he actually put the customer facing write-up. I guess I could find. Where did he put that? I don't remember where he put that. Let's see. I think you guys have the link. Yeah, I appreciate you coming by, Akshanya. I think he did write up. Yeah, so here was the write up. In case you guys haven't seen it, I'll link it to you guys. This is the actual write up. So if you're wondering, what I thought about it, I think they have a interestingly detailed write up. If you guys aren't super familiar, AWS also they will also publish their uptime of systems. They have a systems health dashboard that's always customer facing, so you can see anything in the regions you're in. I thought it was interesting. You can go up and you can see all the old problems. So all the times, oops, where's this at? They had it. I was looking at it just yesterday. Nope, that doesn't have it anymore. Here's the post-event summaries here. Here's all the summary events that have happened, all the outages they've taken in the last 14 years, all the major customer-facing outages. And you can go look back through and see what were the things that caused them to go down each time. And somebody was pointing out every few years they go down. That's probably somewhat true. But also, it's interesting to see, what the solutions are, how they're minimizing the impact in the future. So you can go and read through all that. So anyways, I just showed you all that to say, I don't have a strong opinion on it. I wasn't doing anything out in the cloud. I work with NOAA, which is National Oceanographic Atmospheric Agency. They don't do, they are a cloud-based organization, but for weather. And we have our own cloud. We don't have we don't go out to any public clouds, right? Do you want to work in office? Do you want to be remote? What type of jobs are you looking for, right? But also, being able to talk to and think through some of these things when we do the interviews, and typically when I do the interviews with the guys, I do stuff like this. I will show the questions, and I actually don't show them when we're doing the interview. But I do stuff like this. Here's my technical type questions I might ask you. Here are the troubleshooting type questions that I might ask you. Here are your operations type questions, like operationally, how would you respond to certain things? And then here's some personality ones. Now, I only have those 4 categories because I know that all of those types of questions are going to be asked in an interview. When I've given many hundreds of interviews in my career, and been the guy sitting there evaluating for technical, I am only ever there for the technical part. So technical and troubleshooting are really the only thing you're ever going to field questions from me from. But I will still walk people through these questions, and then because I just want to hear how you articulate it. Because a lot of people know, like you can go to a machine and you could and you could know what these are, but can you explain the implications between it being a UDP or a TCP process, right? And that listener. And could you, talk through if somebody said, what are all of these connections that are coming through this system here, and where are they going to, and what's the implications there? Could you talk to that, right? Like, I don't know, you never know what you're going to get in an interview, but there are, I think I even asked here, can you list all the open ports on the system? Can you show all the processes attached to any port? And why might you want to show this, right? So SS-NTULP, LSOF-I, and then the port number, those are the 2 things I just did. But why might I want to know that? Well, maybe I want to know if a service is up. Maybe I want to check 10 servers to see that they have the exact same ports open with the exact same parent process or host name. So maybe I get, I have 10 servers and 9 of them have port 80 and 443 open, and they're started by the Apache user. But over here on this 10th system, I have 80 and 443 open, but they're not started by the Apache user. They're started by the HTTPD user. And you're like, what the hell is going on here? Well, some of you probably go, well, immediately I would think that one's a RHEL box, and those are all Ubuntu boxes. And maybe somebody deployed the wrong server. Maybe somebody hit the wrong button on an Ansible playbook in Tower that you had given them to deploy some servers, and they put the wrong server in that rotation. And now that server is not behaving the same because it's not the exact same version of Apache. It's not the same exact version of Tomcat. And it's just not behaving the same way that we want. It's not behaving exactly the same as the other 9 systems that were built properly. That would be a reason that I would want to know different ports and users and just be able to dig into stuff. And that is a technical type question, right? Now, I think there's also like a troubleshooting one that's something like that, right? Like database won't start on server. It's been running for months with no problems. You're seeing memory errors in the failure message, but the failure messages make no sense to you. What are you doing? Well, what would you do if a database didn't start on a server? You know, you could ask me questions, I guess, and be like, well, has the server rebooted lately? Sure, just rebooted. What are you doing? Right? Are you checking logs? You calling database team? Like what? I mean, because a lot of these ones, it's like, well, what's your methodology for troubleshooting? How do you drive from a set of unknowns to a known good state? And I have a whole bunch of ways that show you how to do that. I think I even have it on this other slide here. And again, this is up in the Discord, but yeah, troubleshooting. Like, so troubleshooting theory. How do you troubleshoot, right? And a lot of you probably will go, well, you know, I just do a little of this and a little of this and a knick-knack and I paddywhack and it all works. Okay, sure. But does that help you in an interview where you only have 2 minutes to answer a question? Not quite. So, right, like some of this stuff, it's almost like you're telling your Type 5 at the Comedy Store. Like, it's not just about going up there and winging it for 30 minutes and thinking you're going to have a good comedy set. You have to get up there and tell your jokes, right? You have to have your stuff. I'm just kidding. The Type 5 from the Comedy Store is a line from Rick and Morty. But anyways, that's an old one too. It's the Purge episode. But at the high level, troubleshooting follows some type of pattern like this. And you learn this in military, you learn this all over. You learn in engineering school. Identify a problem and its symptoms, establish a theory of a probable cause, test your theory, establish a plan for resolving, implement it, or escalate. If you can't fix it, escalate it. Verify the functionality and implement preventative measures, and then document findings, actions, and outcomes. Now, we can compare that with a 6-step model. Oh, I don't have it. I thought I had a 6-step model. This is just a 7-step model. There's a 6-step model that squishes like 2 of these together. The point isn't to get the right answer like it's a test. The point is to get the right answer to get the frickin' job, right? And then even more than that, be able to do this when it's needed. Be able to troubleshoot and walk through a series of problems from a set of unknowns to knowns, right? And we do this we got an admin course that's free that shows you guys how to do that stuff. All that stuff's recorded up on YouTube, all that good stuff. There's the visualization of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then a basic little flow chart. Good flow chart has one start and one end. So there's truly only one start and one end here. However, they do repeat in some cases and come back up. So, which is acceptable, as long as there's only one start and one end. And I've got all my processes and decisions. Yeah, that's a good flow chart. Good flow chart. Troubleshooting methodologies, there's a whole bunch of them. But all good methodologies have a starting point, a process, and a definitive end point. That's important. There's some ABCs of investigation: assume nothing, believe no one, and check everything. Can't tell you how many times I've been told over the years, you know, get to a server and they're like, the server's been down. Server's been up 76 days, guys. Something else is going on. Oh, sorry, the service is down. The service and the server are 2 completely different words to us in the tech world. To somebody outside, maybe the help desk or maybe some insurance agent calling in, somebody that delivers the help desk work ticket and alerts the problem, they might not use the right terminology, right? Hopefully by the time it gets to you as a Linux person, it's been filtered correctly. But my point is, you can't assume. I've been on calls, guys, where I've been called out and they're like telling me a problem about a server and the server's fine. And I'm like, guys, are you sure it's this whatever 03 server? And they're like, no, it's sorry. Nope. And all over in the messages and stuff, everybody's saying 03. And they're like, no, sorry. The ticket says 01. And they've been derailed for the last 15 minutes, even before you got on the call. And you've been looking at the wrong server that's healthy. and then you jump over the right one, and you're like, oh, no, that was it. And almost always, like, stuff like that is simple. It's just, you gotta go find it. All right, so anyways, so troubleshooting methodology. There's a whole bunch of other ones. Part of this is create a problem statement. Remember I was saying earlier about, like, defining a thing. What makes you think there's a performance problem? Like, is it somebody's feeling? Feeling isn't good. 60% average, I don't know, 60% average error rate, or, error codes coming off of web page. If that's your average, that's a little bit high to me, but maybe 60 is your average, and now you're at 85%. Why? What's going on? Right? Has this system ever performed well, or do you have baseline reference? I ask that because it's important to know, is this a brand new server that was just laid down, and then this is the first time it's experiencing load in, like, a, daily... That's a totally different problem to me than a server that's been running for, like, years and just on a Friday night had problems. I'm going to tell you, I'm looking for, for sure, if anything's restarted lately, any services have restarted and that kind of stuff. I'm going to look for storage filling up, CPU hitting high marks, memory, issues there. I'm going to look at the users that have logged on the system, all my normal stuff. But my point is, it's going to be different if it's a brand new server versus a server that's been running a long time. It's also going to be different if a server's just rebooted. If a server's just rebooted, there's a good chance somebody didn't save some configuration and you've gone back to some old configuration. And now that's one of the most insipidous and just insidious, just terrible things to have to deal with late at night on a Saturday. And you're like, oh, this guy's on vacation, I can't even call him. And then you're sitting there, like, going through their old commands and old versions of log. I mean, it can be a nightmare. Looking what's happened on other servers to see. Anyways, but I'm thinking about my career. What has changed recently? Did we add software and hardware? I've told you guys often, I'd go in a data center, I'd pull 10 servers out, and I'd put, like, a new ConnectX card in them, close them all up, check them, they'd all boot, they'd all come on, look in the back. Maybe it all looks good to me. I'm colorblind, but they all look fine. And then you go back and then you check all your servers. You run a script across all of them or something, and you only see 9 of them with their ConnectX card. And the last one just having errors. And by nature of you connecting to the server, it was probably down. So then you go and you check dmessage, right? Dmessage looks like this. It's your buddy. Where the heck is this? Let's just demessage and then more. And you can see how the system booted. This is the actual boot of this server right here, right? It's how it booted. It's booting off of the hard disk of the system. And then as he boots up, we would get into, if he walks, the kernel does what's called walking the system bus, and it just kind of touches everything. Is everything in place? It's almost like a layout. If any of you were ever military and had to lay all your gear out, all the gear has to look exactly the same. So everything's laid out, everything's where we expect it. But no, maybe the system has something that's not there, that is there on all the other servers, and then this server needs to maybe have their card reseated. Maybe the card's bad. Maybe that PCI slot is bad. This is actually a bad one. This is annoying. You put everything in the same PCI slot on a set of systems, so they're all exactly the same, but then you get to one motherboard and you put in that PCI slot and it doesn't work, but you put in the one next to it and it's fine. So now, if you ever do certain things, you have to remember that mapping is always going to be different. That mapping of that server, that PC, when you do LSPCI and all that stuff, it's always going to be a different mapping than your other servers. Will that ever matter? Probably not. But if somebody ever hard codes something in a script to hit some specific PCI port, because they're like, oh, these first 3 that I checked had the same PCI port, but it's the last one, that script isn't going to work for that environment correctly, right? So, and then you might say, well, Scott, I'll just get a new motherboard. Yeah, sometimes it's like pulling teeth getting the vendors to send a new motherboard out as far as contracts go. So, something to think about. All right. Man, I've been talking for almost 2 hours. Jeez. Let's get this out of the way. Testing methodologies. I just think these are good. I will always tell you guys that you should look as admins at the use method. Utilization, saturation, errors. It's super easy to remember. It's the use method. Utilization is always the resource busy time. Utilization is always between 0 and 100%, always. Saturation is once you've gotten to 100% and you're starting to form a queue or a line, right? I know in Europe they call it a queue, but in America we tend to call it a line. But things start to queue up and wait. And then as timeouts are hit and other things and resources don't become available, errors start getting reported in logs, and we should see timeouts and those kind of things happening in the system. So these are the things that we see down, on the platform side of things, right? The middleware and the tooling on top is throwing these errors down to us. But we are the kind of the kings of the utilization, right? How much is this system being used? And then we track that, right? And there's all kinds of good tools. I mean, there's a lot of admins don't use it top, but I've seen a lot of HTOP and BTOP in my time. Those are pretty colorful and good. There are a bunch of SAR commands that will show you input through your interfaces and those kind of things. So that's kind of useful. And then obviously like Grafana, right? Having Grafana to monitor stuff is kind of king. Do I have Grafana up here? I don't think I have. Right? Like, oh man, I haven't been in here in a while. But like our logs, how's our system doing, right? How's our lab servers doing over here? Here's our server environment is as we expect. We see things spinning up high every day as we expect them to, and memory usage going up. We see logs. Logs are useful for me in my environment because they show me users failing to get in. And if people have locked themselves out, I can see it here. I can also see if there's any spikes. That we just look at the last 6 hours. If there's any spikes in activities and trying to get into the system. Yeah, I think BTOP's great, Johnny, man. Yeah, especially if you just want something that like looks like you're busy at work and you just want a monitor up. BTOP's pretty good because it'll show you what's going on. I have one that I really like for our adminning here when people want to help us in our lab. This one? Yeah, so this one is pretty good one. I'm going to have to update this one for when we move the lab over, but this is a pretty good little heads up display. Just a little heads up display. I can see how long the servers have been up. I need to reboot some of these. They haven't been rebooted lately. And I can see their number of CPUs, how long, their host names over here, and then just how much they're being utilized right now by people. So this is like our environment for people to train in, and I can see all kinds of stuff about the system right here. See if there's if I saw like high outliers of like TCP connections established, people were doing crazy stuff out there, I would be able to see it. Yeah, how much disk they're using. Somebody's actually using Hammer 2. I actually knew that people were using some of those servers because I saw those connections when I did the system over here earlier. Anyways, yeah, it's not that big a deal, but that's all there. Okay, so let's go pull up. So we were still back over here. I was just showing you guys interview questions, and I probably should do those interviews again because people tend to like those. But we were kind of here on the learning some Linux, right? Like what are you gonna do to learn Linux, right? What are companies looking for? And this was a senior Linux admin that we kind of pulled all of this stuff from. I definitely have those root cause analysis things. I also am a big fan of, which is failure modes. I'm a big fan of failure modes and effects analysis, although that's not really great for root cause. That's great for solving problems in systems. Backyard said, is this environment a one-to-one VM to user? Well, every user gets their own VM, yes, but when they're not using their VM, it's not theirs anymore, if that's what you're asking. When users, in our environment, let me pull this up real quick, because this is valuable for people to know. Every one of these is committed to any one user. Once you get in there, you're the only one in there. And then when you reboot it and leave, somebody else, it comes back up about 3 minutes later, and anybody else can use it. But it's a stateless node, so it comes back up clean every time. And I think just because I know people have been using these for a while. We definitely need to do maintenance this week and reboot these all so they're all clean. But then also, I think I need to make sure that people know if you're using these servers, you want to reboot them so that your instance is clean for the next person, right? And then I'm gonna eventually enforce that. I think one of our guys was working on that. We just haven't circled back on it. But yeah, these are all one-to-one for any user that's in there. And then I have a process that runs inside of the Bastion that it only shows nodes that are not connected to by users. So I wrote that. I've shown that on stream before for people that want to see that. All right, so this was our senior Linux engineer. Let's move this one. Let's just go find another one. Ah, you guys want to know something funny? That's my company, Redline. I did not plan that, but I did see it earlier. They want you to be able to travel a little bit. They'll pay you $1 for it. Woohoo! My company's paying $1. What does my company want? They have a need for a high-performance compute person. You need to be able to work in big and small high-performance compute clusters. And you need to be able to do security, Linux, HPC configuration management, systems automation, and having some networking background. So it's not this is not a junior role here, right? And they do say senior up there, so that makes sense. This is very similar to my job right here. Anyways, so job responsibilities. They want you to know these things. I'm surprised they don't have werewolf on here yet. Yeah, I don't see any werewolf. But we could talk. Oh man, HPCM, Lustre Crate. They should definitely have werewolf up here because we use a lot of that. Yep, look at all these things you got to be able to do. Very similar to the things over here, although this one's probably focused a little more on Git. I didn't see that on that other job, but Git, you need to know Git for these kind of roles. You just do. You might want to know some HPE-based cluster management solutions, so that is HPCM, and also they used to have one called Shasta when it was Cray, but Cray got bought by HPE, and then they kind of shelved it. They want 7 years of SLES, Red Hat, and CentOS. Fair. Although I would say CentOS is more going out, and that's probably Rocky now, right? But I would say minimum 7 years with either SLES or Red Hat type flavors for sure. They want you to know Slurm, PBS, and LSF. Those are the big ones we use. GPFS and Lustre are their big networking and parallel cluster file systems. I might also add knowing some Weka would be good. I've shown you guys some. There's good white papers out there for how Weka works. That is a kind of a large bring your own storage type file system. They want you to know some HPC context of InfiniBand and OmniPath and understand that networking type stuff, which is our high-speed backend networks typically. And then they want you to be able to configure, deploy, and manage major systems with batch, network, data storage, backup. Yeah, these are all things that are pretty common. And then scripting experience with Bash, Python, and Perl. And this has got to be an old write-up because it really is Ansible a lot too. All my stuff, like if people want to use, people internal in my company want to use Ansible or want to use my stuff, they have to be able to kick off Ansible playbooks, right? Not super hard to do, but all my stuff is written in Ansible. They want you to be able to do Azure server provisioning and image management. This is huge. That's such a big skill in the industry in general. I might almost say, like, the thing that's probably carried my career the most is my ability to build servers. That may have carried my career more than any other thing. Now, understanding the automation has probably helped that quite a bit too, so automation might be a close second. But like provisioning and image management of servers, I've kind of built my career around, if we were being talking about that. And then that, that's rolling the security in, rolling and baking in the InfiniBand components and the OpenIBD and all these other, and making it all work. It's kind of like, because it's almost like, if any of you guys ever worked with like, Legos aren't a good example because Legos stay together, but I don't know. I mean, it's almost like, let's say Legos were loose and you picked them all up, and if you just walked around with them, they'd be like shaky and they'd fall over maybe. But if you like squeezed them and like locked them all in, now Legos are a bad example because they lock in, so it's not really. But just imagine some toy where if you kind of lock it, it won't move. That's kind of like the way that I think of some of this stuff is image management and configuration across all these different components. You got tables and you're doing all this stuff, but once you get it good and you lock it and then you can deploy it, then it's almost like, oh man, all that effort was worth it, because now all the stuff works. And it just, I don't want to say it feels good. It's not like you're patting yourself on the back and breaking your arm trying to pat yourself on the back. You're just like, no, hey, this stuff actually works the way I expected it to, and then move on to the next problem or whatever. Oh, LMOD and Lua. I don't know anything about Lua, so I think that's interesting that's in there. MPI technologies, being able to do message passing is important. They want you to have some Security Plus or CISSP or SSCP. And then it's funny, I have a CISSP and a CCSP, but the SSCP is a lower version of the CISSP. So, and then experience integrating applications with cloud provider software stacks. So sometimes we do some stuff, we do some testing in the cloud sometimes. And I think I'm not going to write anything from that down over here, because I still think that these are most of the same skills. I don't see anything over here that's too much more than that. But you gotta remember, we're a deployment heavy company. We go in and we do new deployments for customers, so that's a big part of our work. We do that for a lot of other like big name companies, and then we are the ones that specialize in the high performance compute setup. So anyway, so we are hiring though. So I mean, feel free to message me on Discord if you think you're that guy, right? I wouldn't maybe. Yeah, just make sure that you got the chops for that. But I mean, I think there's people out there. I'm not trying to be like some exclusionary person. I'm just saying, like, don't make one of them have to tell you no. What's this? Let's see what the SRE support engineer has. What are they looking for? It's gonna be a little different. They're paying pretty good though. That's not bad. It's right about 150 a year if it's 73 an hour. Because everything's times 2080, right? Because that's how many hours you work in a year. So if you're like, all right, Scott, prove it to us, I'll go, okay. So you got 40 weeks in a year times, 40 hours in a week times 52 weeks in a year, 2080. So you take 2080 times 73.68. All right, it's about 153K a year. Not bad pay. Let's see what they want. Not bad pay for an SRE. Not like super high pay for an SRE, but it's okay. They want you to know Azure, specifically Azure Kubernetes service, so you need to know some Kubernetes. They want you to know OpenShift Kubernetes. So Red Hat OpenShift is Red Hat's version of Kubernetes, and then they just come out and say Kubernetes, and then they want you to know Terraform. Okay? So they want you to know those three things well. Where can you get those skills? Well, Azure has a massive amount of training free online that you can go read through and watch videos. So that's pretty straightforward. Their Azure Kubernetes service. Now, let's say, yeah, AKS is their Azure one. So not EKS, which is the Kubernetes service over on AWS. They have a fair amount of videos out there for that too, to learn that. Red Hat OpenShift. That's actually what my brother maintains. He's been maintaining it for like 8 years over at AAA. And then Kubernetes, there's a lot of training for Kubernetes out there. I'd say get on Killer Coda and just get your hands dirty in that stuff. But then another part of this, like, let's see what they want here. Do they have more? Yeah, so they have more skills and things they want you to have down here. But I would tell you one of the most important things if you were going to go in for this is you want to be able to talk like an SRE person. So the SRE Google books are probably one of the best things you can go spend time with. As far as like, what is the site reliability engineer doing? What is the job? What are they? Hold on. Ignacio said it's a bit off topic. Have you ever used CompViz desktop running AIG? I've never used that. I'm surprised Linux Bible is showing this. No, I've never used that before. What version of the Linux Bible do you have? Because it's very possible. The different versions of the Linux Bible have been around for many, many years. So it's very possible that you got an older one. Especially if you buy it, like Humble Bundle's great, but Humble Bundle will have older versions of stuff sometimes. I do check versions before I buy Humble Bundles. Because sometimes you'll get stuff and you'll be like, this is already dated by the time I got it. So something to think about. But these are always kept up to date. These are published and updated pretty regularly. So They talk about if you want to go be an SRE over at Google. There you go. But for sure, read the books and understand the terminology, because a big part of this stuff, guys, is talking the talk, being able to talk. Like I really do think, and this I've heard this argued back and forth before, but I've never been dissuaded from my thought. I do think that most engineers can tell within about 2 minutes of talking to you if you're operating on the same level as them. And I don't mean that like smarts. I mean like if you understand the system, if you understand the concepts and how they fit together and how they interact, I don't think it takes probably most engineers even 2 minutes once you start talking into something. So where I'm going with that is like find out how people talk and spend time, you know, using the right terminology and that kind of stuff. If you're just out there going, well, this part connects to that part and then this and this and this, nobody's going to think you know how it works, right? There's an old Edward Deming said, if you can't explain everything you do as a process, you don't know what you're doing. And I do fully believe that. You should be able to break the things that you do down into processes. I think that's a very important skill as an orator as well. If you want to teach people things, you have to break them down into simple components. All right, data center technology. Let's see what other Linux crap they'll give me. Linux, data center. Hey, look, if it's in Phoenix and it's data center technician work, that is one of the things. Like, and we've had some guys in our Discord over the years go and get data center work. Guys, I started working in a data center early on. My title at Lockheed Martin for years was hardware engineer. Yeah, they raised up the senior and all that stuff before my title, but it was still just hardware engineer. And you say, well, what'd you do all day? Linux, some AIX, some HPUX, some, you know, but it was all Linux all day. But then sometimes I'd have to go into data center and rack and stack and connect networking and that kind of stuff. Sure. But for the most part, all I did was Linux all day. But my title was hardware engineer. My point is, being in a data center is still working for a company, and it's still biding your time until you can move over. Yeah, John Jones. They asked about AI GLX, which I think is something from their stuff. No, but actually, so some of the people in our Discord have gotten those data center jobs. I technically, I mean, my job, I could go sit in the data center every day if I wanted to. I don't go over there unless they need me in the data center. But that's for my NOAA stuff. But there's some of our guys that actually work with like AWS. They work in Amazon data centers, and they've actually, some of them have moved for those roles. And it's like, hey man, but you still work at Amazon, and you're still in a technical role that has still got a path to move up within the organization. So, yeah. John Jones, if you're in the Discord and talk to anybody about it, I know the guys that are there have talked about it in the Discord before, so I don't want to out it. Not that I'd be outing anybody. I just don't necessarily talk about people's jobs on stream where it's being recorded. But down in the Discord, people will mention stuff like that. I feel like it's a place that's a little more candid for people. You know, they can talk about stuff generically, and it's not like anybody's gonna look them up or something. What's his DevOps engineer? DevOps engineer for some company. Open Network Exchange. That's probably a contract job. But I do tell people, man, like, if you're not in the industry yet and you get offered a contract job, why wouldn't you take it? You're going to go, you're probably going to just be extra pair of hands setting up stuff. You're probably going to be sitting in a lot of meetings and going and deploying things on new types of systems that haven't been built before. So you're working with newer technology. You got to deal with your own W-2 sometimes. Contract work isn't terrible when you're young and new in the industry. I don't think. Personally, I don't think so. Some people hate it. Some people hate doing contract work. And I say, yeah, once you're pretty comfortable, like I don't want to start learning new environments. I actually get dropped in on new environments pretty regularly with my company. And I don't like that. I like just sitting in one environment and being like, ugh, all right, this is all mine. I'll just keep all this stuff running. I'm a big fan of that. I do a lot less of the diving into other environments now, but I still end up doing it because I still have a specific set of skills that's used with different teams and stuff like that. All right, what are they asking for? Hold on, let's see. They want you to develop and maintain automation scripts and internal tools using C# and PowerShell. back out of that one slowly because that's not Linux. No, they want you DevOps. Look, sometimes DevOps is more more Windowsy than Linuxy. I mean, like if I had no other job, would I do PowerShell? Sure, I've done PowerShell professionally before, but it's not on my resume unless the job specifically asked for it. But what are they looking for? They want you to know Azure. Do you even have an Azure cert? Have you worked through it? You know, the first level of Azure certification, which is the AZ900, pretty straightforward, simple test to get. I passed that one on my first try. I think I studied about 16 hours for it when I did it. 16 hours is about what I would study in a week. I remember passing that one pretty easy. I don't even remember what my score was, but it was pretty straightforward. But maybe that one's not going to get you a DevOps role, but then you keep studying and finding some other stuff. But the point is that's pretty straightforward. They want you to be able to use Zabbix or Azure Monitor, so get in the tools, play with them. You need to understand incident response and root cause analysis and remediation across these different pieces. Well, that sounds like what DevOps engineers do. So incident response is its own specific thing, and root cause analysis is its own specific thing as well. But they tend to be hand in hand. Incident response is getting the system back running. It's a lot like changing the flat tire. Root cause analysis is figuring out later why the tire went bad. But you don't sit around and try to figure out why the tire went bad while the car is sitting there not moving, right? If you want to think of it like that. Jones said after the AZ900, you're basically halfway to the first GCP and AWS cert. Yeah, like I took my, when I was studying for the Solutions Architect Associate for AWS, I remember I read that there was like this certified cloud practitioner, and I was like, what the hell is that? So I went and took that, and then 2 days later, I passed my Solutions Architect Associate. So I got those two like back to back, and then like within a month of that, I passed the security one as well. So like I had my first 3 AWS certs in like the first month of doing, not the first month of doing AWS, I'd say within like the first 2 months of doing AWS stuff. But then the reason I brought that up when you said AZ900 is when I went over to AZ900 and took that, I mean, I was like looking at it going, this is all the exact same concepts, just worded a little differently. Okay, I need to know what a blob storage is and components of that as opposed to S3. Okay, they're API-based storage where I hit them with a PowerShell or a, some type of call. What's the other one? It's PowerShell and whatever the CLI is, little bit different syntax, but I think it's Azure CLI or something, whatever that is. But either way, it's like super easy, and you don't even need to know that at the AZ900 level. You just need to know all the terminology, right? It's what we call a glossary test. You just need to know the difference between like an Azure function and an Azure compute instance or something, right? Or you need to know the different types of blob storage that you might deploy for, I don't know, whatever, right? And I guess probably at some level you need to know the difference between like API connected storage, block device connected storage, and network file storage, right? Because those are the 3 major types of file storage that we use anywhere, right? Jerry said, do you think the RHCSA will get me a Linux systems admin quicker than the CompTIA Linux Plus? I would say it 100% would, Jerry. However, that being said, I mean, RHCSA is probably the best starting cert for people. We have a lot of people in our Discord that have an RHCSA. Probably, if I had to guess, over 100. That being said, not everybody wants to do Red Hat all the time, and maybe you find a good company and they're not even using Red Hat. But Red Hat will still give you a pretty good base. Even if somebody wasn't going to take the cert, I would tell them to go and read the body of knowledge and study that kind of stuff, because I still think that's pretty important. So, all right. Yeah, we're gonna get out of this one. We don't want that DevOps stuff if there's no Linux. This one says systems engineer with CVS. Let's see what this one is. How much of this is Linux? How much of this is Windows? They want you to know what Axway Secure Transport is. I've used Axway before, but I don't know what their secure transport is, so I wouldn't be a good fit for this. But they want you to have a bunch of programming experience, okay? But in one of these very generic, across the board, that was not written by the team. That was written by an HR guy. And he said, how do you know that? Well, because this is like, I mean, There's an old saying. You guys ever heard the old saying, like, knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is knowing it doesn't belong in a fruit salad? Has anybody here ever heard that? It's an old saying, but it's a true saying. A tomato is a fruit. It doesn't go in a fruit salad. Get your ass kicked. People throw you out of the barbecue if you do that shit. Tomatoes don't go in fruit salad, right? But they are a fruit. So there's one that it's like the knowledge and the wisdom. Anyway, my point in saying that, those things are all programming languages, sure, but they don't. But they don't. Aside from that, they don't go together, right? Like the difference between a Java engineer and a C++ engineer and their purpose couldn't be further apart, right? Perl for that matter too, right? And SQL, right? Like what does SQL have to do? SQL's not even in the same genre of those. So SQL doesn't even count because it's not even a fruit anymore. In my other analogy. Anyways, my point in saying that is that's just, it doesn't all fit. Then they want you to know Red Hat, AIX. They want you to know all these. So they want you to just know everything. But this is good. Familiarity with security and compliance standards such as HIPAA and NIST. I think NIST is one of the best just styles of frameworks to know. I show people all the time stuff out of NIST. If you guys go through any of my presentations over the years, you'll find diagrams and references to NIST all over the place. Because it's a great place to have a starting thing, like a starting. If you guys have ever seen I have a werewolf presentation that I did recently I did it for work, and then I did it for the werewolf user group, and then I did it for you guys, and I recorded it. Let's see if I can find this. It's a werewolf presentation for Prologue and work. Is this it? Where I was going with that is this diagram right here. This comes from NIST 800-223, which is high performance compute. So this is an excellent visual representation of a high performance compute cluster. The only fault I have with that is that this person right here, when they did this in Visio, didn't know to send this object to the back, so it wasn't covering these letters. It's the only thing I have a problem with on it. Everything else on here I think is a great reference. And it's accurate. It's exactly what we build at a high level. Like it's what we call a 10,000 foot view. From high level, that's what all the different components are. And then we come down and we dig down into each one of the different things and build it. So anyways, that's not what we're talking about right now. System engineer. Probably not for us. I've never heard any of those words right there. Additional MFT technologies like Go Anywhere, Cburger, and Ipswitch, or IP Switch. I could probably go look all those up, but I have no idea what those are in that context. Literally never heard of those. Then they want you to have a bachelor's degree or high school with 4 relevant years of experience. So they're doing a 1-to-1 on your bachelor's to that. That's cool. Their pay range is between, that's about 90K, a little under 90K a year, or right around 90K, and to that's 90, so that's almost 180. So right around 180 a year. So that's a big swing, by the way. So that must be their low end of like the beginner engineer and all the way up through like a high-end system engineer. Then they give you all the benefits. So I don't know, like a lot of these jobs aren't strictly, this is not strictly a Linux job. They mentioned Linux, but they were not strictly a Linux job, so, which is fine. I mean, like, not everybody wants to do Linux all day. I've told you guys that. Airport information systems, senior database. So I have colleagues that work over at U-Haul. Like I know like 3 people that work over at U-Haul right now. They've got senior database administrator. That's not for Linux people. If you're a Linux engineer, you probably don't want to go jump over to that. Hallmark has Linux on Z Linux 1. I've never heard that, but that's interesting. And it was remote and placed today. So at least go look at what they're asking for. They want 7 years experience on IBM Z system. So I've never used an IBM Z system. I've used IBM P595 and 695 servers, but never this. So, and then look, this is one that I mentioned earlier about being able to deal with vendors. You need the ability to interact with and feedback to IBM development organizations. So you're probably, a bigger customer, CVS, bigger company. Oh no, this Hallmark, probably still a bigger company, and you need to be able to deal with them. And then size and scope engagement. Yeah, so there's some skills here you're leading technical teams, got to deal with, and you're probably going to be making some PowerPoints. If you're interacting and present to executive management, that means you need to have some presentation skills. Strong negotiating and demonstrated problem solving. Yeah, so this one, it says Linux, but it looks more like they want like a manager. But it does say deploying and or administering Linux. That's actually really funny, because it seems like it's a very small part of what they're actually looking for there. Early warning services, okay. Anyways, we won't keep going through them because I'll probably get off here soon. But I kind of wanted to come on and show you guys. And does anybody want these notes? I drop these notes up in our Discord because these are the things that I think are, I guess, useful if you don't have any of this. If you've never walked through this before, a lot of times I'll just go through this stuff in meeting notes. There you go, boom. If anybody needs it, you guys got it right there. So. What else were we doing today? Yeah, we're looking at jobs. This was our SWOT analysis. Make sure that you understand your self-assessment and you can figure out where your value is in the industry. Like, what do they want you for? What do they need you to do in the thing? Yeah, Backyard, I appreciate you coming by. Let's see. Let me show you guys one other thing. I think. Oh, I didn't show you guys this today. We always have in the Discord free events. There's Bash Study Group tomorrow. There's Security Engineering Course Round 2. So we've run it before, but this is going to be Unit 5 of that. All you got to do is show up. That's it. Show up and basically have a pen and paper ready. 16-week automation course is tomorrow at 5. So we're in Unit 5 on that. This week we're doing variables. So we've been kind of slowly working through system stuff, and we're going to get into variables. And like, variables as a concept are super simple. Like, okay, the variable is there, you reach in, it's either there or it isn't. Okay, everybody here uses variable, right? But where do they come from? How do you check them out in an organization? Like, what are some of these things going to look like? I actually have to go fix, and that reminds me, I got to go fix a Vault thing, because I'm going to use Vault as an example too, where we can go pull values out that other people populate, and then we can have the ability to share secrets within an organization without me having to know those secrets, except that my pipeline can go check them out with the right keys and stuff. And that's super powerful. It starts to become super powerful for organizations. Like, I have the power to deploy and build things, but you've got the environment that you want to set up for your team to do things. We can work together. We can define those interactions and define. I really like the way that King Buns talked about it. He's one of our senior guys that kind of hangs around. He was talking about everything's kind of like a contract, where we're going to speak in these terms between each other, and that's very important, because your system, if I'm taking the right inputs from my suppliers, then my input process outputs works correctly, and then to my customers, it's what we call a SIPOC diagram, SIPOC. I can feed back that information in a way I can pull in information in a chewable way, like in a digestible way, and then I can send it back out in a digestible way for the next person down the pike, as it were. That's the correct term. It's not pipe. All right, so late night Bash study group, and then we'll do writer's room on Sunday. The guys put together the books. The books are awesome. If you guys haven't seen the books, they're free, and they're really good. It said sit by. I know. This thing's always trying to make me look like an idiot. And then lab maintenance. I got to reboot all the machines this week, so because it's been a while. If you guys have never seen the books, here's all the books. They're free. Free is the best price for books, right? Here's the Linux admin book. Looks like this. Here's all 16 weeks. You can go in. You can do whatever you want. Here's the security engineering book, 10 weeks. And then here's I believe the Linux admin book is still getting put together. Sorry, the Linux automation book. They have up through 4 in there now, so we're all done through 4, and then they got the worksheet. They're probably getting the labs up too, because I have the labs up there. So I know they're going to get the labs eventually. Oh, they've got the worksheet here too. So they're eventually going to get the labs in there. I do mention the labs in the recording, so you guys can go find them. But yeah, the guys have been putting these books together. These are all built in GitHub with Markdown, and I really like. If somebody were to show me this and say, "Hey, I'm the guy who maintains this," I would be like, "Yeah, you're hired for all this documentation crap that we have, because this is super useful for people and it's free. It's all free online. Anybody need it? Here's a link if you guys need it." Bacchiotomy. There's one book if people find it that's paid for, and that is separate. That's on LeanPub. So yeah, full disclosure. There's this on LeanPub that people can buy. That's a different thing. This is if you do all that other stuff. I tell you guys, spend hundreds of hours on all that stuff for free. And if you ever say, "Oh, I want to go a little deeper in on the labs," this is much more like. Oh, I appreciate that, Bacchiotomy. This is much more of like a. What the value I was trying to add here, because I already think the labs are just good enough standalone. The value I was trying to add here for people was like, you could go and kind of dig deeper, like the lab, because the labs, if you go to Killer Coda, right? I'm not trying to take anything away. I think Killer Coda is one of the best things on the. If you need to get your hands on the systems and type, and you don't have a system to do it on, Killer Coda will give you a free system to do it on. That's super powerful. I spent probably 10,000 hours in there over the last few years, just building stuff and messing around with stuff, and then I have all people that have been in there, and I mean, my labs have had, I think we average like over 5,000 a month of people kicking off my labs, because it doesn't show me kicking off labs, it only shows when other people does in my thing. Anyways, where I'm going with that book is just designed for extra stuff. It's not I wouldn't even say necessarily, strictly speaking, it's needed. I would only tell people to go that route if they really want to dig in on the stuff after. But yeah, these things are all free right here. And I did not come up with this. I mean, I wrote the courses, but the guys turned the courses into this book. So I think there's some really good stuff there. And then they got the Discord link. So this is all the stuff for Killer, for the course and stuff. And this is my stuff. I gotta draw some stuff in here for the course tomorrow. I like to draw notes, and then I put everything in PowerPoint. Some of you guys know I'm a PowerPoint guy just because my college uses PowerPoint, and I think PowerPoint's fine. I think it's one of those necessary evils in the world. So anyways, all right. What else do we got? Yeah, let's call it there. Let's go to our little end of stream. I appreciate everybody coming by. We will be on. I'll be on for. Let's see. When will I be on? Tomorrow for the courses. We'll talk through the things. We'll work on some stuff. And I think people really enjoy the security engineering course. I think if you want to get into system building, that's a good place to start, because it shows you kind of a crucial part of it, which is hardening boxes and making them work well.